I'll ask anybody's question but yours. You're an idiot. And really a disloyal person.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Disloyal Idiots Podcast. Crochet Guzman here alongside Steve Heller and Mike Ostrowski, who essentially has become our third podcast member since Andy Pregler. Good to see you as always, Mike.
Yeah, long time no see. It's good to finally catch up.
Indeed. I mean, we kind of all saw each other yesterday in the Dome, where there were a lot more people for April football than Syracuse has ever witnessed. Ever.
Yeah, we should have gotten a live photo of all podcasting personnel in the same place at the same time, showing that we are, in fact,
real people,
capable of being real people. However, we didn't.
That is a missed opportunity. It was also a missed opportunity to bring like a cutout of Andy just to be like, hey, he's here also in spirit.
Well, we could have just taken a picture without him, and then people would never know.
And that is indeed true. Well, that was fun yesterday. We are recording this, as always, on Sundays at 8 p.m. Tune into the live stream if you are listening on your podcast platform of choice. But because we are recording this on Sunday, April 21st, that meant yesterday was Saturday, April 20th. And there were more reasons to blaze it than just having blaze it on 420. A great football game happened in the Dome, which we didn't expect in April, ever, 5 months ago.
No, we didn't at all in any way, shape, or form. And that wasn't the only banger in the Dome yesterday?
Yes, indeed. I mean, I didn't watch it because I had prior obligations an hour down the road. But
work getting in the way.
Yeah, work was indeed getting in the way. But that wasn't indeed a banger as well. We'll get to the debrief of Syracuse, Virginia men's lacrosse a little bit later. But like it says in the title of this podcast, it's time to go darting in the Dome.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways we could start this.
Yeah,
should we go? May I?
Oh, go ahead.
May I? Fran, I love you. Did you have to steal someone right out of Penn State's backyard? Because now I'm feeling a little bit conflicted. Like during the game, you just casually gets a 4-star running back in the middle of the spring game.
Yep. And also a 26 guy, just to be clear. And again, it's kind of weird because now all of a sudden Syracuse fans are getting jaded at getting recruits now just because of how many Fran has brought in. Now we kind of just need to sit back and remember that the only recruit really that Syracuse has not only gotten but also like eventually showed up on campus remains to be seen for some of these 26s, but the recruit that a Syracuse recruit that has committed well in advance that then has come onto campus. Really, that only one of those guys in recent memory has been Tommy DeVito. And then now you've got multiple guys who are 2 years out, heading into their junior years of high school, who are deciding they want to play for the Orange in 2 years. Which is nuts. You would have never seen that ever in Syracuse.
Sorry, I was silent for a minute because I was counting in the spreadsheet. There were 36 recruits at the spring game of all shapes and sizes and commitment levels. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 commits. At least 5 4-stars. 1 Florida State commit that decided to show up, Javian Hilson. Fran's still doing Fran things even when he's in the middle of coaching.
And of course, Steve, back when you and I were, more inclined in covering the, Babers and Schaefer areas, if you got 36 recruits to show up on campus during a single semester, you'd probably be happy.
Yeah, I mean, at least from some semblance of public knowledge of that happening, it seems like that's also more readily available. Whether that's the evolution of the recruiting services or also not keeping everything a completely closed off silo to keep the the hype train moving.
Unfortunately, David Hale didn't get this picture when he attended the Thursday media sessions. David Hale, the ESPN ACC reporter, He took a picture of the media, us interviewing 2 members of the recruiting staff on Thursday morning, one of them being Cami Pasquale. But the other ones, Pasquale. I'm tired. The picture he didn't get beforehand was the Syracuse communication staff bringing out the entire recruiting staff of 7 guys for all of the media to interview.
Insanity, absolute insanity. Like,
Which people, I guarantee you, media members just in general in Syracuse probably wouldn't have even considered that was a possibility under Dino Babers, under Scott Schaefer, under Doug Marrone.
No, the last 2 years was just trying to could we get just the coordinators, not the whole freaking staff, just the coordinators.
And the answer was no.
Yeah, and the answer was a firm no.
Yeah, absolute insanity. I mean, the levels of, and it was hilarious because the first, at least, and we haven't even gotten to any of the game. This is all just the general feel for everything. But within walking into the dome, within about 3 to 5 minutes, I mean, instantaneously, but within about 3 to 5 minutes, when I finally got to my seats that I was choosing and talking to my friends and whatnot, and I looked over, and it was just like, you looked on the field and you looked in the stands and you could tell something was different. And there was just, I hate to say it's intangible, but there was something that was very, very different compared to spring games past, that was compared to even game days past. There was a fervor in the stands, and on the field there was, I don't know, it just, like an energy level between seeing all the alums, seeing the recruits, seeing all these guys in pads, full go, 1-on-1s, 2s-on-2s. Like there was a very, very distinctly different feel to what we saw last night.
And part of this is the honeymoon phase of having a new coach, and obviously wanting to see what the program looks like under a new coach. But there, especially in spring games past, even under the first spring game under Babers, I can't remember that far back, but I would have to assume even under the first spring game under Babers, there wasn't an excitement in the stands. Like people in the past couple of spring games, people have been bored. People have been sleeping through the spring games. That's why only 2,000-3,000 showed up for them in the spring. And reports were that, the Syracuse was expecting between 10 and 15,000 for this game. I would say this were
before we talk about the veracity of that. When that got announced, all of us were in the noon Slack. None of us thought that was remotely close to an accurate number. We all thought that was going to be like insane.
And then when you get to the game, I would estimate about 12,000 people in the stands.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Like it looked like what the attendance was for the Syracuse Virginia men's lacrosse game plus a little bit more, and that Syracuse Virginia men's lacrosse game was just under 9,000 people.
Yeah, you still had end zone to end zone, and then for the football, the difference was you had a couple people in both end zones and a couple people like Steve in the upper deck on the home side. Again, when has Syracuse ever had people in the upper deck for a spring football game?
Well, the caveat is, when have people been put in the upper deck for a spring football game because of capacity? Because what this spring football game normally has been, and it's a little bit different this year, obviously, because of donor renovations. I'm not sure if in future spring football games it will look like this. But what spring football games normally have also been an advertisement for season tickets. So people that would go up into the upper decks would be ones who are interested in purchasing upper deck season tickets. And those are the only people who would willingly go up into the upper decks in prior spring football games.
Right. Those that aren't sadists like me and want to actually see the field from being able to see plays develop and whatnot. Like there's dozens of us.
You mean on one finger?
most
One.
of us are in this room. But the weird, like, I went up because I was like, okay, I wanted to go sit in my seats and just, see them for one last time before the bleachers go bye-bye. But, settling in about I think we were in 304. The looking down, you would have been hard pressed to find space along the 50-yard line, and like most of the way to the end zones on either of the sidelines in the 100s. Like it was almost imperative to come up to the 200 or 300s. Kind of weird. Really weird.
Again, this is the spring game.
Right.
You can only imagine what that will look like when we get into September. It'll be very, very interesting to see how that attendance unfolds. And but it's just, again, you gotta have to sit back and just remember, we've never seen that. Yes, what has also been happening is now the talk and the hype online is getting matched. It's not just all talk and hype anymore. Now people are putting their mouths where their butts are and sitting them in the bleachers, soon to be plastic seats.
Right. And I mean, I've said in the past, I've had more people approach me about knowing I'm local and relatively, knowing what's going on up there, have approached me. I've got 3 to 4 new guys with me in my season ticket block, and I've had multiple others ask about them. So the hype is starting to come to fruition, and assuming that all the good news continues through to fall camp, I don't see this hype train dying down.
So Steve, we're 12 minutes into this podcast.
Yeah.
And we haven't even talked about what happened on the field.
Yeah,
of the spring football game.
We even mentioned a player?
No.
No.
We haven't mentioned a player who is currently suiting up for the Orange right now. We have not done that. But normally we would have done that within the first 3 minutes.
Yeah.
In prior podcasts, we're recapping the spring game.
Yeah. Well, before we get to players, do we want to get to more of Fran and how, if anyone's listening to this and hasn't watched his post-game presser and wants to understand Fran Brown a little bit more, go watch that post-game presser.
Yes.
Yeah. Mike and I were obviously there for that.
Yeah. Yep. So, I guess in person, did it feel the same of him just being completely no nonsense, answering exactly answering frankly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything felt like he was speaking from the heart, and he was not. There's no coach speak.
Yeah, the only thing that Fran spoke around was potential compliance violations.
Right.
Those are the only things he spoke around.
Yep. And for anyone who doesn't know, that's the Donovan Brown situation currently, who was not suited up or on any of the rosters for the game. So he is, as of Fran's press conference, not with the team.
Yeah, but even that, after Chris tried to have a little bit of Chris Carlson tried to follow up a little bit, Fran flat out said, look, I'm going to get in trouble if I say any more than I did. So even that he was being as blunt as he could be about.
True. Very true. So, when in your post-game presser, you talk about how the walk into the dome wasn't good enough. There's a level of detail that's being put into this program that we have not seen put into this program in possibly forever.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, listen to the podcast. Possibly check out Noon's Magician in the Morning for more on that. Hint, hint. Yeah, that's all I got for the moment.
Fair enough. So follow up on that one. If you're watching this on the site, then click probably 1 or 2 up from where you're listening to it.
What's incredible again is that Coach Fran Brown is not just trying to change the culture on the field; he's trying to change it off the field. He has seen success, especially in the past couple of seasons, and he has seen what success looks like and what it takes to breed that success.
Yep.
It only takes back-to-back national championships to help teach you that. So the fact that he knows that success and knows the culture that you need to build in order to have that success, and now he's looking to build that here, is incredibly, incredibly impressive. And also, again, it's not just going on the field; that's going off the field as well. When you heard that with his walk-in comments, you heard it with his comments also about players. Hey, I know, hey, you want to sign autographs and stuff, but you got to do that after the game. During the game,
Right.
Stay locked in. Even though it was a spring game, which is more a marketing thing more than anything. At the end of the day, the spring games have always been more marketing than anything. He still wants his players to be locked in, to treat this like a real competition.
And I guarantee he's taking notice of who is locked in, who isn't locked in, and that may very well factor into who's still on this team in August, because I believe we've just gotten down to 85.
Yes, we are officially at 85 right now.
However, it's based on what Fran said, some of the other comments post game, it seems he's very much not done in the transfer portal.
I thought you were going to say, just as I'm refreshing now, we just got another commit.
No, are
you kidding?
Yeah. I'll give it 15 minutes, maybe during the ad break. That's when it's going to happen.
Yeah, that tracks.
That does track. And knowing us, also, it'll probably happen at 9:30. That's usually what tracks.
All right.
Gentlemen, we're 17 minutes into this podcast.
Still holds.
Should we talk about a couple of players
Sure.
and action that happened on the field?
I mean, I guess we could start with the one guy that was wearing orange. He seemed kind of okay.
He did seem okay.
Or red when you're looking at the TV timeout guy, like I was when I was talking to Mike. I was looking at the TV timeout guy and talking about McCord, and I said wearing red, and I was like, oh, yeah.
Yes, Steve. Red.
Yeah.
Orange.
Got it. Noted.
Also, the fact that there was also a TV timeout guy for the spring game.
Actually, no, it makes it even worse. It was just some random dude on the sideline on the other end of the field from the TV timeout guy, if I'm remembering right.
Jeez, Steve.
Because McCord was standing next to him.
All right, let's talk about Kyle McCord. This is going on for too long.
I was just trying to see if we could make it to a full 20. There's breaking news out. Kyle McCord can throw a football.
No, really?
Yeah. We saw it. It's real.
Steve, this is your first time seeing Kyle McCord throw a football in person.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Mike and I have seen it in practice.
Yeah, no, I don't know. The deep balls were all put in places where only a receiver could get them. Even the missed throws were in a spot where only the receiver can get them. Outside of the completion to Darrell Gill, everything mid-range had zip on it when it needed to. It had touch on it when it needed to. I'm very worried about 10-yard outs. And other than that, I'm very happy with Kyle McCord.
When was the last time you were worried about a 10-yard out?
All the time.
I should have seen that coming.
Fair.
Yeah.
But once again,
the last 3 years.
But again, once again, yes, the name holds a lot. The accolades speak for themselves. Again, there's probably hasn't been quite some time since people were this excited about a quarterback, and the quarterback seemingly starting to deliver.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna have to say again, he looked impressive. He looked exactly like Syracuse needed a steadying presence in the backfield, especially with Garrett Schrader gone.
Yeah.
I think we could all say that just based on what we saw from Carlos Del Rio Wilson and from Braden Davis, that it exactly wasn't going to fly with them as the backups. with them as running as the starters, I should say.
Yeah. Now that said, Delrio Wilson looked much better when he was running with the ones than when he was running with the twos, which is to be expected. And also, Braylon Davis has not really been playing quarterback, it seems.
Yeah, this was a change that started in the very last practice. Braden Davis started taking wide receiver reps. And Fred said in the press conference, yeah, depending on who we get in that transfer portal, he'll go where we want him to be.
Right, which roughly translates to they're looking for a number 2 quarterback in the transfer portal, and Braden Davis should probably grab the stickum and start working it wide out, which seemed to work quite well for Thunderdan. So here we are.
Well, yeah, it's to learn Thunderdan's workout routine, which, given the current Syracuse strength and conditioning staff, will not be hard.
Yeah, that was another very prolific talk around the stands was what was going on with strength and conditioning, and the kids just look bigger. And I showed some people the before and after pictures, and it was mildly hilarious, their reactions.
Shout out to the Elijah Clark and Deuce Chestnut before and after pics. All right. I think there were obviously McCord is the big talking point just because he's Kyle McCord. But there were a lot of players who stood out in that spring game. Let's go talk about the three of us, our favorite player from the spring game. Number 23, freshman, Yassine Willis.
Yeah. So
people probably were a little bit shocked when earlier this week, Juwan Price put his name into the transfer portal, who was the number 2 running back last year behind LaQuinn Allen. Yassine Willis showed why he did that.
100%. And for the record, Jaden Hart didn't look too bad with the twos either, but
he did not. No, indeed.
No. And this hasn't been a super sudden development. Going back to last week when we had that 11-on-11 session in practice, Willis was with the twos at that point.
Yep.
So it's been pretty clear throughout camp that he's been trending towards that backup spot. And when you look at him and see him in action, you see why. The dude is it's a little cliche to say he's a tank, but yeah.
No, he's an absolute unit. The dude is huge. And trucked people on our ones. He was running over our linebackers and carried 3 of them into the end zone at one point.
I need to pull up that.
This is a true freshman. He's 6'1", 220. He's just a large human being. And to be able to go fire and ice with, or fire and lightning, is that the standard cliche?
Thunder and lightning.
Whatever. Various acts of nature in the backfield between him and
LaQuinn. There
you go.
Yeah.
I kept wanting to say Price because we were just talking about him. I'm doing real this between the red, orange, and that. I'm having a great 2 days. But the mix up between those 2 styles of running is going to be quite solid. We did also see that he was able to catch, I think, at least 2 passes out of the backfield. So he's got hands on top of being a truck. I don't know. I think I signed up officially as the first or second, depending on when Christian joined, member of the Yassine Willis fan club. So,
I've already been a fan for a long time, so we can argue that.
Well, my way too early prediction for him is that he needs to be the goal line back. You are not stopping that big of a man from a yard or 2 out.
No, you are not. It's just physics.
It's just physics. That's a good line.
So yeah, I think that will be a big. That was literally a big takeaway from the spring game. That said, Allen did look good in the reps he got. He looked like we expected him to look, including breaking a 45-yard run or something like that for a touchdown.
Yeah, indeed.
Nothing new on that front. Trevor Pena looked like he is back.
That's what I wanted to get to next. Yeah. Trevor Pena, finally healthy. Really didn't play last season due to injury. And in the slot looked like a very, very serviceable slot guy, and probably is going to be the number one slot guy when Oronde Gadsden isn't shifted out there.
I say, I think we were talking about it, Mike, running that double slot with, even if it's running that double slot with Gadsden tight, like not in a true wide slot, like almost as an H-back, something along those lines could be a really, really formidable formation too.
Especially because obviously what we saw a lot was 11 personnel in that game. But obviously with Solari, and if you put in Gadsden, like there's opportunities there. You could potentially go and see more 12 personnel as well.
Yeah.
Which could like create some interesting things. But if most college football offenses nowadays are going to go 11 personnel, and so it gives that opportunity for Pena to be that second slot guy when Gadsden is also on the field. And again, like he was, getting open over in the middle and getting trusted by McCord over in the middle, and getting trusted also to catch some balls that he needed to jump up for, which was impressive to see.
Yeah.
And at least one scenario where he had to catch it in stride, like above his head and just keep going with it. And it worked. That was, I believe, like somewhere in the range of a 50-yard catch and run.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and to see him kind of come to the forefront along with Zeke Haynes and still having a couple of guys out with injury that are probably ahead of them. Like, I don't know if Haynes is going to be the one, but he sure looked like he'd be more than capable.
If I would have to guess, it's probably Haynes is probably going to be the 2, and Jackson Meeks is probably going to be the 1.
Yeah,
that's what I saw a lot of practice. I saw before Meeks got injured, he was mainly the number 1 guy that was working with McCord.
And Gadsden technically could have put this game towards burning his red shirt because he was out there during active play. However, it was on field goal when there was nobody running at him. So he was there in full helmet, and we were like, what's happening? Why is he out there? Like, put him in bubble wrap. And then he walked out and fake blocked somebody, and that was it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking.
Experience.
I'm looking back at that Yassine Willis touchdown run. He runs right into the guy that's blocking Derek McDonald, and then just pushes them.
Yeah. And then a linebacker and a safety try and grab him, and he just keeps pushing.
And I'm pretty sure one of those safeties was Cinco.
Okay. You said Cinco. I thought Cisco, and I was like, he was there. I don't think he was in pads.
I think he would have liked to have been.
Which also on socials, Cisco and Leggett Jack were hanging out, and it was great to see.
That's very cool.
Interoperability.
Mm-hmm. Also, for those who weren't, they were more watching on socials. Hassan Reddick made an appearance.
Yeah, randomly, because totally makes sense.
He's from Camden. It does make perfect sense.
Because Syracuse is now Camden North.
Yeah, indeed. Like that, like full circle makes sense.
Yep.
We've got a bit of time before the halftime break, and I think we can use as much of that time as we want to allow Steve to talk about his favorite subject in the whole wide world. Steve, the former offensive lineman.
And
let's talk about the offensive line.
For anyone who's seeing like me gap, it's like in response, it's because I'm trying to pull the Pregler and put the article up since we haven't for the last couple of weeks because we forgot that Pregler did it.
Yeah.
So somebody's got to do it now. That said, we have an offensive line. They were moving people better than I expected them to. Still some, couple hiccups here and there, but overall, the line from left to right was Enrique Cruz, Jacob Bradford, DeAndre Reed, Mark Petrie, and Demetrius Witherspoon, the new JUCO transfer, I believe.
Yes.
Tackle. So they, put together in general a pretty solid look against a good front. What I would say is I don't know if you could just arbitrarily tell, but it seemed after watching them for a while, defense was, pulling their punches a little. We weren't getting they were going above drill speed, but I don't think they were at game speed or anything like that. Hence why I wasn't all that worried when the scoreline was as wonky as it was, even with the ones-on-ones, that the ones were scoring pretty readily. I think, guys like Diggs or Tank would have, they have another step beyond what they were showing that we're going to see in true game speed. So I'm not worried about them. That said, they gave a good look at, or for the offensive line. I thought overall they looked vastly improved from last year. To be fair, that doesn't take much.
I was gonna say.
So I will couch it like that. But, a lot of very similar personnel with a lot of very different results. Bradford seems to have taken to the weight room and also some mobility courses. Looked good getting to the second level. Still, and we found out last year, works better on the left, which is where he ended up. Overall, I don't know if you guys had any thoughts in general on the big men, but I thought the ones looked good.
I'm going to ask a complicated question.
Oh, Jesus.
What about the twos? Because we're going to have to turn to them at some point.
Well, my 2 cents, I guess, is that I think one of the current twos will still end up being a one, because we saw in camp Ellis just starting to work his way back, just getting out of no contact not that long ago, and for now was the right guard with the twos. If I'm not particularly a betting man, but if I was, I'd bet on him to be in a little bit better shape come August and probably be able to work his way up to at least contending for a spot on the right side with the ones. I think out of the twos, he had one of the better games. I didn't really see him get beat. And even with the ones, it was a good game, but we might have to flip over to the defensive line, because there's you've heard of King Joseph Edwards for what he's doing in the community, but it's pretty apparent, he can play football too. Because he was beating Enrique Cruz pretty bad several times. Yeah.
So, and Enrique Cruz, I still would, last year I probably consider him our best lineman, and this is a 4-star kid coming in that's just making a name for himself by running past him. Just back to the twos quick. Oh God, I texted the Slack just because I was like, I need to remember who it was left or right. But in general, it was not as great. Del Rio Wilson had to definitively move around the pocket a little bit more than he should have. The game actually started. Ellis didn't start as the guard for the twos. The starting twos were Miller, Moiolo, Iloa, Joe Cruz, and Trevion Mack. So Ellis, they definitely are still just working back in, because there's no way he dropped to the threes outside of coming back from injury. He's down in AAA on a rehab assignment at present. But that setup, I still don't know what we're ultimately going to see out of Miller, who was the Georgia transfer. Moiolo had a year here, and we'll see what this new system can kind of mold him into. Iloa, at this point, we know what we're getting out of, though, again, who knows within the last couple of months what this, different people respond very differently to a drastic change in focus and general demeanor around the program. So, maybe he's one of them that snapped to and is 100% in the Fran Brown camp, and it's also helping on the field. Who knows? I still stand by the fact there is promise within these backups. I think they're backups for a reason, but I think we also still have Wollaba, Ellis, and who else was carrying a knock? There was somebody else that was like in contention that I thought was injured.
I forget.
Yeah. Either way, one way or another, there's a lot of large bodies. Who knows with the transfer portal if there will be more large bodies, because Brown just seems to be like very much in that SEC Big Ten vein of like, all right, if we have a need, let's go get it. Which, hey, if that's going to work and he's going to be able to go get it, then grab whoever you can. So that's my thoughts on the big men on the offensive side. That definitely brought us to halftime. You want to do that and then follow up on Mr. King Joseph Edwards?
That was indeed going to be the plan. Before we get to the defense, we'd like to thank our halftime sponsors. Home Field Apparel, the sponsor of this podcast. We always love Home Field Apparel's throwback apparel for any of your colleges, especially for Syracuse. Use the code NUNES23, that's NUNES23 at checkout. You can get 10% off your first purchase of all the great Home Field Apparel throwback needs. You want comfy sweaters, shirts, bomber jackets, sweatpants, stat hats, you name it, it's the comfiest thing you're probably ever going to wear in your life. So go to homefieldapparel.com and use the code NUNES23, that's NUNES23 at checkout for 10% off your first order.
Did I see one of the Cuse bomber jackets on the field? I thought I saw somebody walking around with
Well, what we did see was Eric
so.
Devendorf wearing a Home Field Apparel shirt this weekend. So we've got the Devendorf seal of approval.
It's a big seal around here.
It is. Indeed. Once again, Home Field Apparel, NUNES23 at checkout. 10% off your first order.
Oh yeah, now that I chopped the hair off, maybe I'll grab one of the dad hats. They'll actually fit again.
Let's head on to the defensive side, which we've kind of touched on a little bit. But what we also saw, yes, they weren't at full game speed, like Steve said. But there was definitely more hitting than what we've seen in spring football practices past.
100%. 100%.
The Marlowe Wax continues to destroy men on the ball.
Yeah, and I
Which
think
is
I was
good to
talking to you, Mike, when we were up in the stands about how you could very much see who was in a battle for a spot by who. It's like who felt somebody breathing down their neck by who was going 110%.
Yeah, there were a few. There were absolutely a few that even going into like fourth quarter did not let up.
And that's an impressive thing. Like, aside from McCord, the one stayed in the entire game. And maybe LaQuint Allen as well. Like, besides those two, the ones played the entire game, which was very, very impressive to see. So they were out there to hit, and at least also for some of them to compete. We can start from our way up before we get to the social media sensation himself, King Joseph Edwards. So talk about that starting line a little bit. And Steve, like we said, this is your first time seeing a lot of these guys in person. Fidel Diggs is pretty big.
He seems to be. Yeah, I don't know. He seems like a large human being, and he seems to move very well for being a large human being.
That's the impressive thing. I think like his feet and his speed is very, very impressive for his size. Like, he moves like he is a lot lighter than he looks.
Well, that's your SEC talent right there.
This is indeed the truth. This is indeed the truth.
I still remember going from, Steve is old. Back in when I got to college football in 2003, I never understood. Like, this is just little old me coming from the middle of the Adirondacks and down to play D3 ball. I never realized big guys could move quick. Like, I was always the big guy that moved quick. And then I see people that are like 40, 50 pounds more than me and moving quicker. And then you see somebody like Fidel Diggs, who is, very large and moves extremely well. And it's an eye-opening experience.
Indeed, it is. The defensive line looks a little bit better. I think just in general, the defensive line is in general in football nowadays. They're more comfortable playing with a 4-down set, and I think that works really, really well with this 4-2-5 system that Elijah Robinson is bringing in.
Yeah.
And it also works well because I think Marlowe and Derek McDonald are funny enough to have as your 2 linebackers.
Yeah, I think those will work fine. Question will be safeties, and I believe in that defensive back core where a lot of those names that Mike and I were talking about playing a little bit little freer than most.
Devin Grant got the initial start alongside Jaden Bellamy as the starting quarterbacks. But we've seen Marcellus Barnes as well shoot up the depth chart as a starting quarterback. So there's definitely like some question around the corners. The safeties seem like they're pretty locked in with Clark, Barrett, and Chestnut along the back. So
and Greg Delane, also one of the guys competing for corner right now. But the big thing with that is when you get someone in the portal just a couple days ago who's played 4 years at Notre Dame, you definitely feel a little extra pressure for your job at that point.
Indeed.
Yeah, and for the record, that I think that seems more of a special teams ad, but still, like, the point remains 4 years at a school like Notre Dame. Like, I think he started 18 games, and then got kind of usurped by a younger kid, and that was a year and change ago. So I think, who knows, but like, and this is Clarence Lewis for anyone who's wondering who we're talking about. But yeah, either way, there's plenty of, I guess, plenty of experience coming over and plenty of talent. So we'll see how that goes.
All right, let's get on to the twos, and let's start off with King Joseph Edwards, who had a strip sack in the spring game against Carlos Torrio Wilson, and got some run with the ones as well, running against the ones as well. So he seems to be like firmly in the role of that, backup defensive end. And with most defensive coordinators, they're going to rotate a lot to keep bodies fresh. And so it seems like even as a true freshman, he'll be in the mix.
Yeah, and you talked about Marcellus Barnes earlier, but and I guess you've seen Willis on the other side of the ball, but there seems to be a good number of freshmen that are looking up for playing time here. I guess a testament to Brown's recruiting class.
Yeah, indeed.
Or, well, it's one of those where I don't, the cupboards weren't bare, but if they can recruit over what we had that relatively easily, I don't know. I'm of a couple of minds on that one.
There is a little bit of truth to that as well. Like, how scared are you with the people that have been there already, and all of a sudden here comes the true freshmen that are knocking on the doorstep of the ones in some cases. But at the same time, like, hey, in some SEC programs, that's what happens. Then, hey, Fran Brown wants to build an SEC program. He said that flat up front. So,
yeah,
with his actions, that's what he's showing. It just seems mighty impressive what we saw on Saturday. And it's obviously hard to be impressed by a spring game. But like Steve said, there's just something about how the program feels right now, like fan response, alumni response, player response, where people just feel better about being around Syracuse football.
Yeah. If there's one moment, too, that doesn't really have anything to do with the on-field product, just coming back out onto the field in the second half where Fran took a moment to try to hype up the crowd a little bit and say, thanks for coming out and helping us build a good program again. He didn't have to do that, but that's just another sign that he knows what he's doing. He's appealing to the fan base in a way that a coach here hasn't done in a very long time. like, honestly, probably before I was born, going back to the Pasqualoni days.
God damn.
I didn't mean it like that, Steve, but I'm trying to put it into perspective from me. Like,
Oh, 100%. 100%. You're not wrong in any way, shape, or form.
I mean, even look at like during some of the timeout TV breaks. You know, they had Fran and some of the coaches literally giving out awards to the best spring practice players on the field.
Yeah. Yeah, you never saw that in the past.
Nope. And those weren't really publicized that much in the past either.
Right. Yeah. No, and I mean, it's weird. Sorry, Mike, I was thinking a little about the hype since Pasqualoni and all that, but like, as weird as it sounds, back then when Robinson was hired, there was a good bit of hype because Pasqualoni was past his prime, or at the time that's what was assumed. A couple mediocre years. He wasn't, outside of the potential Ray Rice coming, there wasn't a lot going on recruiting wise. There was stagnation in what was happening. Like, couldn't do post Dwight Freeney. It was real rough. You have Walter Reyes, and you can't do much with the rest of the team. And there's this guy with an NFL pedigree coming in, so there was hype there. There was a feel-good story after that when Marone came in to save the day from said feel-good story. There's been a lot of ups and downs, but none of the peaks have been as high as what we've seen. And valleys will never be as low as Greg, but I think the peak of where we're at is probably about where that Robinson coming in. It's well above that, and that was probably the highest. I think we got burnt too many times after that to have the high be that high, and this is kind of getting some of that hope back for the fan base.
That's basically like we just haven't had hope in general or anything surrounding this program. The last time there was even a smidge of hope was 2018, and Syracuse really couldn't build off that.
Right, and even the 2019 spring game wasn't there wasn't a ton of hype around that time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. It all feels weirdly different, and I know I've said that like 17 times this podcast, but it's weird. It's weirdly true.
Indeed. Gentlemen, final thoughts about the spring game before we move on to the other crazy thing that happened at the Dome?
No, I'm just happy.
Fran also made a Bruce Springsteen reference, so you can tell he's already getting on the reporter's side.
There you go.
That's all. That is all.
Shout out to Kevin who tweeted at last night because someone commit on Thursday night while every single sports writer in Syracuse is at Bruce. That would have been just the funniest thing to see. Like some of the sports writers having to scramble, be like, crap.
Yeah. I just got, I was just scrolling through, I was refreshing Twitter, and the thing that popped up, do you remember, since you guys were both there in the presser, what was Fran's thoughts on the team on a scale of 1 to 10?
5.
Yeah. So we're hyped out out of the building, and Fran's like, yeah, it's about a 5. Like, we can be way better. Okay. Wow. Like, that's where your expectations are.
That is indeed where our expectations are.
I don't know. I feel like my expectations are drastically shifting now.
As they should be, and I actually think what Syracuse football has been waiting for, someone to shift those expectations. Of course, the expectations for Syracuse men's lacrosse, as they always are with that program, is to make it to Memorial Day weekend, which Syracuse hasn't done for quite some time, since 2013.
On the men's
And now, Syracuse might have a say in getting back to there, getting strengthened even more so by a big, big win over Virginia. Shows you what the Syracuse offense can do when it has its offensive coordinator.
Comes in handy.
That indeed does come in handy. Syracuse, with a game of runs, as it always is in lacrosse, just nonstop 3-4 goals runs against Virginia, one of the best teams in the nation, featuring one of the best attacks in the nation, and stifling them long enough at the end of the game to go on a 4-goal run, including a ridiculous Billy Dwan goal to tie the game. Sam English then giving the go-ahead and eventually winning goal with under a minute to go.
Yeah.
That was a game. Again, I haven't watched the full game. I only saw a couple highlights, mainly because of my other job.
Yep. So you know that guy wearing 22?
He seems to be good.
Yeah. Guess what? He's also a really, really good decoy because he did not have a single point, assist, or goal yesterday.
And so this is the thing with Joey, though. And while that is good for Syracuse, that they got production without Spallina.
Yeah.
One of the biggest gripes about Spallina is that he just doesn't perform against the bigger competition. Didn't have a great game against Duke. Didn't have a great game against Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Didn't have a great game against Maryland.
Or apparently against Virginia.
So luckily Syracuse was able to overcome that. But the thing is, Joey's wearing the 22 for a reason. And yes, let's remember, he's only a sophomore.
Right.
Yes, he's the only sophomore and the only underclassman on the Tewaaraton top 25 list right now.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he's there for a reason.
Yeah.
And he's put in this position for a reason.
No,
So, and I think Syracuse fans are like, hey, like, I get it. You're still a young kid.
Yeah.
But hey, look at what number 9 for Virginia is doing.
Fair.
Look at what 34 in blue for Duke did his freshman year. I get it. You were the number one recruit. I get it. You're still young, but you were the number one recruit in the nation. And I think for Spallina, like, yes, he's still growing. But, like, for Syracuse to reach the ambitions it wants to reach, that can't happen for too much longer.
Yeah. No, and it did seem, reading John or Sonego, is that right?
Or Sonego.
There you go. I screw it up every time. Sorry, John. Listening or reading his recap on the site after watching some of the highlights, it did seem like from what he was saying that the offense was running off the wing and that it was kind of designed to not run through him. And whether that's a function of March shifting away from that, knowing or hedging against that, or what, it seemed like it was designed to not focus through him, but also, hey, do something, like poke him with a stick, do something.
Which I find weird.
Yeah.
Because what I saw with my very own eyes during the Cornell game was that this ball moves really, really well when it's in Spallina's stick.
Yeah.
The offense moves really, really well when it's in Spallina's stick. And yes, Cornell's defense is nowhere near the levels as some of the other top defenses in the nation. But the things happen when Spallina gets the ball. And so while that might have been a matchup-specific thing against Virginia, against some of the other top teams, like, things have got to happen in order to unlock Spallina a bit more.
Yeah. Now, that said, Owen Hiltz took up the mantle, it seems.
Which is very, very good. And it's something that I think people forget about Hiltz, especially since he's kind of been taking a back seat with Spallina, and his prolificness on offense.
Yeah. Well, with Hiltz, it's just he had the great freshman campaign, then he missed a whole year, and it seems like since then, just overall people kind of forget that, like, yeah, he's been back the last 2 years and has been a huge part of the offense. Some nights he's more of a distributor, some nights he's more of a scorer, but this was one of his best games the entire season. And when so much attention is on Joey Spallina and is on the big transfer names that you brought in, Christian Moulet, another guy who had a decent game but wasn't really the top scoring option. It helps to have that many reliable shooters, which again is something Syracuse has lacked. I don't say necessarily lacked dependable shooters, just you kind of knew where the ball was going last year, and it worked for the most part, and it was the problem was on the defensive side. This year, you really have no clue where the ball is going, but you know somebody is going to start scoring in bunches.
The other big thing, again, is what does this team now do defensively? And the big thing is short stick. Ever since Max Versa got injured, it's hard when one of your best short sticks gets injured. But then you also had Landon Clary injured, and so depth is an issue. Wyatt Hoddle, as much as he was great in scoring, he is an offensive midi that is turned short stick just because of needs. And you don't necessarily want that too much. And while he's done okay, like their short stick is going to be an issue, and especially teams like we saw with Cornell are going to take advantage of the short stick matchups. And Virginia's offense certainly put a beating on that defense. Man, Wilmark can't do it all himself. And once again, we're back at defense is going to be the issue for Syracuse.
Yeah, that said, Mark with 15 saves, had a great showing and did what he could.
And the unfortunate thing is that for Syracuse, that's the minimum you need Mark to do at this point.
Which is exactly what we are hoping to avoid this year was Will Mark is still one of the best goaltenders in all of college lacrosse, but you worry that when you're counting on him for 15 saves a game that he's going to start getting burned out, as we saw near the end of last season when SU desperately needed a win down the stretch to get into the postseason picture, and by then he was just too worn out. Again, they're bit of a better position now since they were able to steal some games earlier in the season. And they're really, other than Notre Dame, there still hasn't been a bad loss in the entire year.
Yes, Cornell's not a bad loss.
That was a bad... Okay, going into that game, that would not have been a bad loss. The manner of which it happened was horrific.
This is indeed true. I at least like what you said for Syracuse. Tournament aspirations for Syracuse are not as much of an issue as they have been in the past. This Syracuse team should make it into the ACC. Not just they're in the ACC tournament. This Syracuse team should make it into the NCAA tournament, and they should be hosting a first-round game.
Yeah, and I think before this game, I was looking up, like, Inside Lacrosse had them as, like, an 8 seed. And after taking care of business against number 4 Virginia, I would assume that improves. So
that will improve, and I think they can for sure lock it in with a win in the ACC tournament next week. Actually,
we don't have enough teams for that.
We still don't have enough teams for it, but we have enough to hold a tournament, but not got an auto bid.
Enough teams for the bid, but we have enough to at least hold the tournament.
Yes. I'm actually going to look this up.
This is, while Christian's looking this up, this is the Billy Dwan does ridiculous things with a long pole moment of the podcast, because if you didn't see his game tying goal, go do that. I don't know. He's supposed to be a defender. He's had 2 of our best goals on the year. So, go check that out. It's fun.
Yeah, this will be interesting for the men's team because they have an entire week off before the men's lacrosse championships next week.
So that's the first week in May?
Yes.
Okay. So they've effectively got a bye this week.
Yes.
Gotcha. So that's gonna, that might be rough.
That'll be very, very interesting. Syracuse can start games off hot, but
Yeah.
like we saw after a week off layoff, it'll be hard to see if they can kick it into gear and avoid what happened against Virginia, which was they went down early. They went down early 4 goals. So this will get interesting to see how this Syracuse team plays out.
Yeah, it happens.
Women, unfortunately, losing to Boston College. Still can't kick the Boston College jinx.
No,
Still can't kick the overtime jinx.
I was going to say, continue the trend of Syracuse lacrosse teams losing 1-goal games.
But
literally the only reason why the Orange Eagle Trophy might still exist somewhere is because of BC women's lacrosse.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, Syracuse will look for some revenge in the ACC tournament, which the Orange should be favorites in, with, again, Boston College really being the biggest folly to the Orange right now in that tournament. We should see. But that should do it for this week's edition of the Disloyal Idiots Podcast, which we took a lot of time in April to talk about football. Didn't think that would happen, did you?
I did as soon as we got the coach change, but prior to that, not a chance in hell.
Indeed. Thank you all so much for listening on your podcast platform of choice. If you're watching live on Twitter, Twitch, or YouTube, make sure you leave a like or follow along. If you're listening on the podcast platform of choice, make sure you leave a review, a rating, a like, a comment, so that we can trick the algorithm into expanding the Ottoman Empire. As always, Sundays at 8 p.m., most Sundays at 8 p.m. This will get a little bit slower as we move into the off season, but as the football season turns the corner, you can bet we'll be right back here to cover all of the Fran Brown era. Mike, as always, thank you for joining us. Steve, as always, great seeing you. We'll drag Prigler out of his hiding hole at some point.
Someday.
Indeed, someday. I'm Christian Guzman. Thank you all so much for listening to the Disloyal Idiots Podcast, and go Orange.
Go Orange.
Go Orange.